Welcome to HECTV's live interactive program that's part of St. Louis.
The whole production is pulled together.
It's going to be a steel bridge.
On the American classic novel,
The car that put America on wheels.
Welcome to HECTV Live. The Contemporary Art Museum sponsors the Great Rivers Biennial Competition, where local artists are juried by a panel of their peers and 3 are selected to exhibit throughout the summer months here in the St. Louis community. Tonight, you're going to have the opportunity to meet Laura Freed, curator of the exhibition. You'll have the opportunity to hear from Paul Haw, the director of the Contemporary Art Museum. And of course, we're going to meet each of the 3 artists who are part of the Great Rivers Biennial for 2010. You're going to have the opportunity to meet Cameron Fuller, whose work is certainly influenced by folk art and Native American perspectives, as you may see here in this snippet of work that we're seeing. You're also going to have the opportunity to meet Sarah Frost, whose work was inspired by a very unique video that she saw somewhere, and we'll talk to Sarah more about that unique inspiration for her particular exhibition. And third, but certainly not least, you'll have the opportunity to meet Martin Brief, whose work is indeed exceptionally small and precise, and every piece that's a part of this exhibition has one word that repeats throughout it, and we'll talk to Martin about why that word was continually put in every piece of this exhibition. So you'll have the chance to meet the artists, find out about what it is that they are inspired by, how they choose to create the exhibitions, why they chose this particular piece for the exhibition here, find out from Laura Freed how we curate exhibitions and get all of this stuff together, and of course, just enjoy the evening right here for the Contemporary Art Museum. The Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition opens tonight and continues to August 8th. So you have a long time to be able to come to the Contemporary Art Museum and enjoy it for the summer. We want to begin, though, by giving you a little bit of background information about the museum itself, its purpose and its mission. And for that, we had the opportunity to interview Paul Haw, director of the museum.
The Contemporary is a new museum, but it's also a very old museum, in that we opened our doors in 2003, but it began in 1980 down in Laclede's Landing.
And what's the purpose of the museum from an artistic point of view? Are you looking for new and modern artists continually?
Well, contemporary art simply means the art of today, art of now. So a lot of times artists come, make a site visit, and they create artwork specifically for our site.
And in terms of the exhibition that we're here with tonight, the Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition, what's the history of that exhibition and how are these artists selected?
Well, as the Contemporary Art Museum, we thought we should be the museum for the living artists here in St. Louis. So we started a program where 3 artists get chosen by very, very important curators, and they each get $20,000 plus an exhibition here at the museum.
The work specifically for this exhibition are not created until they're selected?
A lot of them, you know, it's a big moment for them, and so when they come and they get the chance, they've usually stepped up and provided an incredible exhibition for the space.
In terms of the mission of the museum beyond just the space, I can come, I see the exhibitions, but you do educational outreach. There's a number of things that the Contemporary does that's more than just what we see in this building, right?
Yeah, what's important to remember is that the exhibition is our main mission, but beyond that we have incredible education program, outreach program, and it's a very social place.
In terms of people coming and visiting, what are your basic hours and when can they come?
Well, we're open Wednesday through Sunday, business hours, and we have many, many late night events, so people must check our website, and there's something going on here almost every night.
Now we're going to have a chance to meet the curator of this particular exhibition. Laura, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's first of all talk about what it means to be a curator in general. What is it that you do?
Well, as a curator of contemporary art, I look for what's new and exciting in art making today. And at an institution like this, where we don't have a permanent collection, I invite artists to come and produce new exhibitions. It's about supporting artists in their practice, giving them a chance to produce something on a scale they haven't realized before, for example, or to provide a platform for an artist who's been around a long time to produce new work. We support the production of culture, essentially.
When you think in terms of contemporary art, besides the fact that it's just happening now, is it like broader in terms of the types of materials that are being used by artists, in terms of the way they're approaching certain things artistically?
I'm sorry, do you think has the medium changed?
Is it broader, is it different as the medium changed?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as technology has developed and changed, the practice of art making has. It's become a greatly expanded field where 100 years ago what you would consider fine art would be painting, you know, and sculpture less so. But now with various media like video and film and through, you know, the digital technologies. But also artists are less prescribed to certain styles or media or techniques. You know, it's about the ideas and not necessarily about what the formal qualities are. So everything has blown open.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the three artists who are part of this exhibition. First and foremost, where do they come from? What is the juried competition like? What's that process like?
Okay. Well, all of these artists are those who live and work in St. Louis. The goal of the awards program is to provide local artists who are part of this community, make this their home, to give them financial support and the opportunity to produce an exhibition on a large scale. Each of these artists, I think each of these artists is not from St. Louis originally. They've moved here through school or to teach, such as the case of Martin Brief, and they've stayed because this is such a great place to live and work, and because there are opportunities like this, like the Great Rivers, where each of these artists gets a $20,000 cash award. It lets them, for example, take a sabbatical from teaching so they can focus fully on their practice and on making this exhibition. This all happened about 6 months ago when the jury came in and selected from over 200 applicants. And then once they're selected, they get to work right away on producing the exhibition. It's not uncommon for these artists to already have in mind what they want to produce if they win. And because they only have 6 months, and this is a major show, they get right to the studio and down to work.
So where does the jury come from?
Oh, the jury comes from all over. We bring in every 2 years 3 distinguished curators from all over the country. It's a national, we're bringing them in from national institutions. This year it was Douglas Fogel, the chief curator at the Hammer Museum in LA, Laura Stewart, the director of Site Santa Fe, great contemporary art space, and Melissa Pugh from the Pugh Charitable Trust in Philadelphia.
Well, let's talk a little bit about each of the artists. Let's first of all speak about Cameron's work. Speaking from a curatorial perspective, if I walk up to Cameron's work, what's a framework, what's a frame of reference you'd like me to think about?
Oh, well, Martin's is, I think Martin's is the perfect installation to first encounter when you walk down into the exhibition. At first it seems like a really spare, minimal, subtle installation of drawings. They're these long scrolls of paper, 28, with these small, very tight, in the middle of the page, what look like seismographs, or like a heartbeat pulses. They look abstract, they look like abstract line drawings, but that have a kind of indexical data registry to them. When you approach them, you get up close. I mean, you're really drawn in because they're so small, you don't know what you're looking at.
You want to read, you want to get as close as you possibly can.
So at about 4 or 5 inches, depending on your your eyesight.
If you're nearsighted or farsighted.
You realize that what these lines are in fact lines of text. And then what you're looking at, down the center line, is the word, numerous times, God. And then you have words in front of and beyond it. And what they are all the titles that come up when you search for the word God in books on Amazon.com.
I'm looking forward to talking to Martin more about what inspired him for that, because the name of his exhibition is Amazon God.
Right.
And when you hear that originally, I don't think people would think about what inevitably pops up then as a result of his work, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to talk with him about. Let's talk a little bit about Sarah's work.
Yes.
Because obviously it's an installation piece that you can actually walk through and around. And how would you describe Sarah's work?
Well, Sarah's been making work, and I've been having studio visits with her over the last 3 years that I've been in St. Louis. She makes work mostly using discarded or found man-made materials like computer keyboard keys that she's found in a junkyard, as junk, or discarded yellowing household domestic appliances. And she builds these architectural environments out of them. So she's interested in the craft of man-made objects that can become architectural immersive environments. This show is a little bit of a departure for her because she's decided to handcraft all of the objects herself. And when you walk into the installation, you realize that this paper cloud, this beautiful suspended cloud in the galleries, is made up of hundreds of guns, all made from paper and tape that she has handcrafted. And when you turn the corner, you see this row of photographs, these video stills, and you see these portraits of young kids, very young kids, 6 to 12-year-olds who are crafting these guns. You see that there's a little video line, like a YouTube video line underneath, and what she's done she became fascinated with this online community of sculptors, as she calls them, these young American, mostly boys, who self-publish instructional videos on how to make artillery.
I'm looking forward to talking to her about that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, because the first artist I'm going to have the chance to interview is Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about large-scale diorama for sure.
Well, Cameron has a background in theater set design and is a carpenter, but is a natural-born collaborator. And for this exhibition, he was interested in creating a space where he and his friends and his fellow artists could produce ideas, and he started this, what he calls this institute, for the perpetuation of imaginal processes. And it's basically a museum that he wanted to build for himself and his friends, where they could all contribute ideas. So for this exhibition, which is his largest to date, he has created a temporary home for this museum, this so far imaginary museum, and the objects within it are part of that museum.
It's going to be very cool. When you come and see it, I think you'll be very impressed as you walk through. One of the things I noticed immediately was the artists are so exceptionally different, and I think that makes for the exhibition to be really, really interesting. When you walk through the three works, you're going to respond to the fact that, wow, very different perspectives, but very interesting perspectives to listen to.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here, Laura. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having us. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks.
Laura Free doesn't just curate the Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition, she curates a variety of exhibitions throughout the year here at the Contemporary Art Museum. Because again, as she mentioned, the Contemporary Art Museum does not have its own collection. It brings in works from other places. And we're about to be joined now by the first of the three artists we're going to talk about tonight, Cameron Fuller. Cameron, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thanks very much. Well, we had the opportunity to come in earlier and take some video of what you've got here. So as we speak to what you've created, we can have the audience have a chance to look at it. Talk a little bit about this project, this institute, and the nature of turning the museum kind of idea going here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a lot of solutions for kind of various things in the work that I've been doing. I guess the institute was kind of an idea that it was a kind of long-term project, I guess, for us to figure out if there was a way to kind of start a strange little museum of sorts that could not only serve as a place that I could work, but could also then kind of become a platform for other artists and people that I know that have interesting ideas that maybe don't have a place for those to exist yet. I guess that's one of the kind of things about having any sort of success is like, how do you, as an artist who, I mean, it's difficult for all of us sometimes, how do we use whatever sort of successes we have to like help one another and to kind of create something that's bigger than any one person. So it was just a way for me to start bringing people in and doing collaborations and to, I don't know, to be able to kind of step back a little bit and have some sort of editorial vision, but to also, to really, spend time with friends and work on these projects together and really make a kind of community effort out of the work as opposed to doing it just on your own. So it's a nice way to just bring people together, I guess.
Very cool. When you walk into the first room and you see, I'll call it the diorama of the natural scene there, talk a little bit about it seems very folk arty to me. I get, it's taxidermy deer. Talk a little bit about what you put together there and what you're after.
I mean, I guess a lot of my work uses fairy tales and fables and those sorts of things, and I think that there's kind of a lot of existing little tidbits of information that we associate with those kinds of stories, and I guess the idea is to use that example of the kind of Natural History Museum diorama, and instead of presenting a little slice of the real world that's unavailable to us, that this is a kind of a mental thing, that this is something that exists in the imagination, and this is a way of kind of bringing it into being in a real way. And I guess part of the whole idea of the Institute, too, was just to kind of re-emphasize the fact that reality is a kind of plastic thing, that we all choose how to look at the world, and that optimism and playfulness and whimsy is also important sometimes.
And the vividness of the color, because I'm really struck by the vividness of the color both in the diorama and in the wagon piece, for lack of a better thing to call it. That reminds me a lot of actually the wizard character when he's the professor in Kansas in The Wizard of Oz, the wagon that he's got. The vivid use of color, is that part of the idea about the childhood fantasy, etc.? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think I'm attracted to that really bright color. I mean, I think there's just something playful about it and something cheerful. And again, I guess to me, art is a way to entertain myself and to keep me, happy and energized and all of those things. And I guess that's just what I'm drawn to. The color is, and again, I think that also speaks to the idea of kind of childhood illustrations and all of those things where bright color, is really something to kind of pull us in and get us interested when we're younger, and to kind of keep our attention for that period of time, I guess.
Now, the middle part of your exhibition obviously seems influenced to me by Northwest Native American situations. So the mass that you've got there, is that an area that you've been intrigued by for a period of time?
A long time, yeah. I mean, I grew up in Washington State, and I had kind of a stepfather who had relatives who were Native American, and so we were around it off and on when I was a kid, and it was just something, I mean, I ended up a printmaker in undergraduate. I was very interested in the kind of graphic nature of those images, and I just think they're really compelling. And I guess the more I thought about it, the more about the idea of kind of community and how art functions to serve a community, that that was a culture that these things were very much integrated into their daily lives. And it was also something where not a single person did it, but it was a kind of community effort. So some of those pieces in there, actually, I invited other friends of mine, and we worked from drawings to kind of construct things together, a little kind of clan, if you will, that we got together and kind of, I don't know, kind of stated our purpose to have art be a kind of integral part of our lives. So.
Now, you come from a theater background to some extent, right?
Some, yeah.
How is that? How has the nature of theater influenced the nature of the work you produce?
I think theater is a lot about smoke and mirrors, about the little kind of tricks and sleight of hand that you can do with common everyday materials. And I guess this stuff is all created from hardware store things or stuff you could, get at the floral supply place. So, I guess I feel like the idea of transformation and also presentation. I mean, theater is very much about light and about kind of controlling all of those elements to create an experience. And so, I think that's really the goal of this, is to kind of mold an experience for people.
Well, Cameron, thanks very much for sharing with us. I hope everybody has a good experience tonight as they go through your exhibition.
Great. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. That's Cameron Fuller. Remember, the exhibition, the Great Rivers Biennial, will be open until August 8th. So you'll have an opportunity throughout the summer months to see it. We're next going to have the opportunity to meet Martin Brief, whose work you're going to see very, very differently. And we're actually able to see people in the museum looking at Martin's work. And Martin, come right on in. Thanks so much for being here.
How are you doing?
It's good to see you again.
You too.
Well, let's first of all talk about the title, Amazon God. A lot of people, like for example, if I just saw the words Amazon God on the paper, I might be thinking about, I don't know, Amazon, Native Americans, their gods, that kind of thing. Talk about what inspired you for this work and the nature of putting God in every one of those creations of yours.
Well, Amazon God comes from the Amazon.com, where I got the titles for all of these books. But really, boy, it's hard to say like how these ideas come about. But I guess, God is always in the conversation, whether it's politics or social issues or religion or whatever, and has always been a very contentious thing. And so I wanted to take a look at that, and I thought Amazon.com is a place where a lot of people go for all kinds of things, but it's a resource for information. And I thought this would be a way to sort of capture a kind of contemporary portrait of God and what people are saying about God, or how people are using God, and that's kind of how it took off.
Very cool. It's a fascinating idea. The precision of your work, though, we also must speak to, because we had the opportunity to tour your studio, so we actually are able to see the video of you working. Why so precise? Why so small? Are you inevitably drawn to that size? Because it looks really cool, for lack of a more artistic term to give you. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I guess the size part, what I like about that is it allows the written word, the text, to function both as text. If you get close enough, you can read it. But if you stand just a little bit further back, it's not text anymore, and it becomes an abstraction, more of a line drawing. And so I like the fact that that the information can function in both ways and simultaneously, and that's important to me, because I'm not just interested in the written word. I'm also interested in what can be generated abstractly. It allows for that text to function differently and do something else.
Yeah, because I think the shapes of everything is very, very interesting. I mean, some of them are very short, some of them are much taller, some of them really go back and forth, kind of like an earthquake seismograph.
Right.
do you create a shape in your mind and then make the titles fit it, or does the shape just naturally evolve
Yeah.
from how you...
I collect these titles from Amazon, and so while I said I want to align the word God because that was the focus of the project, but what happens in terms of that motion back and forth is all very random, and that's the great part for me, is that I don't control everything, and like you said, some of them really seem, very active and have a lot of dynamic movement, and some are very close
tight,
and tight. And that's one of the things I really like about working this way is I have to give up a certain amount of control over the visuals.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, even though I'm very precise.
I was
like
just
you
saying, you're
said.
very precise, but...
Yeah, but I like to create a system that I will execute very tightly, but within that there are certain parameters or certain aspects of the system that are unpredictable.
Oh, very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the paper.
Yeah.
Is it heavier than vellum?
Oh yeah, it's a watercolor paper, Arches watercolor
Okay.
paper for people in the know.
Now, for those of you who are interested in purchasing some of your own for an artistic project with
I don't
small
work
little
for
words
the
on
company,
it.
but
So when you're writing the words, you've got them all lined out. You've got some sort of grid you're putting them on, so that's how you create that line across. And what happens if, can you erase what you've got, or how did,
if I make a mistake,
uh-huh.
I am able to correct to a certain degree. The paper is thick enough that I can scrape off some of the fibers and lift off some of the ink and then redo. So for some people who are really sharp-eyed, they may be able to spot where I made some errors.
Well, I didn't notice any myself.
Well, thanks.
So,
That's good to know.
and I was looking pretty close.
Yeah. So
Thanks so much for being with us, Martin. We really
appreciate
appreciate
it, Tim.
it.
Good to
Enjoy
see
the
you.
evening. Good to
Thanks.
see you. So Martin Brief's work, again, part of the Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition that is on exhibit here at the Contemporary Art Museum until August 8th. You just come to Grand Center, see it. Our next artist we're going to have the opportunity to speak to is Sarah Frost. Again, we're going to see a very different work, and I think that's really cool about this exhibition. Sarah, come right on in. Thanks so much for being. Good to see you again. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the nature of your work in general before we talk about this particular piece. You like to use found objects, I understand, quite a bit. And so this piece that we're going to talk about here is a little bit different than that. But in general, you've used a lot of found objects before in your installations and what you create?
Right. I'm interested in the history of objects, and in the past I've mainly used found objects themselves, but this is found form. So I found the form on cyberspace on YouTube, and I recreated it as faithfully as I could. And put it in the context of a museum.
So you've created an object in essence. Instead of using found objects, you found a form that's all, the object is guns or different kinds of guns.
Well, the object is a particular kid's gun that he made on the video.
Yeah, let's talk about that unique inspiration. So you were just on YouTube one day. How did you come across?
Well, I wasn't even on YouTube.
Okay.
I Googled something about doing something with paper. I can't remember what I was doing, starching paper or something, and somehow I found something that said paper sniper rifle tutorial, and I thought, what in the world is that? And I looked at it, and it was the image of that kid that looked like he was 7 or 8, and I was so amazed at how inventive his gun was with moving workable parts, and so astonished at how much he knew about how the gun worked that then I started looking around and discovered hundreds of those videos.
Wow. Who would have had any idea?
I sure didn't know.
So your goal then was to create the gun just as they were describing it to you, to follow their instructions.
Right. Well, not all of the videos were tutorials. Some were tutorials, but I found that the tutorials were so long-winded. Like some of them would take 3 10-minute tutorials to make one gun. That then I started, well, I call them trophy videos, where they're just showing off their gun and how it works. I started just looking at those and looking at how the form turned in space and what the components were, and then trying to make that. It's actually a really challenging sculptural problem to look at a 72 DPI video and then try to make it 3D form.
And the paper is is it like cardstock paper, or heavier than that, or less heavy than that?
Well, I think most of the kids used printer paper, although some of them said they used cardstock. I used 2 different weights of paper depending what I was doing. I found that sometimes a lighter paper worked better, and sometimes for structural support I needed a heavier weight paper.
Let's talk a little bit about the installation. When we saw it on the video, you actually can't see any of the filaments you know, the fishing line or whatever that's hanging from it. You just look at the video that we took. And it's fascinating. It really looks like they're just floating in space on TV that way. Why did you want to create something suspensive here? Why were you interested in that idea and letting people, in essence, kind of like walk through and mingle? Maybe that's the wrong word, but mingle, so to speak, with the piece.
Well, originally my idea was about the space of this museum. The ceilings are just so high. I think that's a unique feature, and so are those clear store windows under the roof. And I thought that it would be really neat to have something hanging from those windows. And once I started working with the guns, I realized that the negative space, the shape around the gun, was important. You know, and if I just put them in a jumble, you couldn't identify what gun was what. So the two ideas just sort of came together. It seemed that hanging was a good way to show off the negative space, the shape of the gun.
Oh, very cool. So as you sit back and look at the process now, and do you evaluate your work as an artist? Do you just think, oh, that was cool, I'm glad it's over? What's it like now to see it all come to life, so to speak, and have people respond to it after you did all this work?
It's very exciting to have people respond, and I've heard some really positive responses, so that makes me feel good. And some people are picking up on some of the same things that drew me to this project, so that's rewarding. Of course, I could critique the work, but I'm kind of tired from installation, so I think I'm just going to take a break and not get too critical.
And just enjoy it. That's great. Well, enjoy your evening, Sarah. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much. Sarah Frost, the third artist who's part of the Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition. Remember, it continues here at the Contemporary Art Museum until August 8th. Sarah's piece, of course, is very unique because it's hanging from the ceilings of the Contemporary Art Museum. If you've ever been inside the Contemporary, then it's a lot of cement and high ceilings and cement walls. And you may wonder what they do to actually be able to put the exhibitions into place. Well, we're here with Cole Root, Exhibitions manager and registrar. Cole, thanks so much for being with us. Come right on in. Well, let's talk a bit. What does it mean to like put the exhibition together? And let's talk specifically about Sarah's, because I noticed when I was in the room, there's some sort of like grid up on the ceiling. Did you all have to create something specific for the room?
Actually, it's something we talked about with Sarah whenever she was coming up with the project, and she actually had the grid fabricated.
Okay.
And then we came in and installed it, and then worked from it. And you know, a few alterations had to be made along the way, which is, you know, anytime there's an original project, we have, you know, things that come up that we have to work around, which is, you know, part of the job. So it's always fun working with, and interesting working with local artists because they're a part of the community, and there's always something, trying to help people come up with something new, and also helping them solve the problems that they come with along the way.
Now, do you all change the floor plan of the museum at all? Or like, are the rooms, like if I were to walk through this exhibit tonight, and I see another exhibit, let's say that's occurring in, you know, September, will the rooms always be organized the same, or do you have the capacity to like rearrange?
No, well,
based
since
on...
we're a non-collecting museum, we have about 3 shows a year, and in between shows, a lot of times we change the floor plans. We build a wall, tear down a wall, change the doorways. We try to alter the space, you know, to make it feel like a new space whenever you come in. And sometimes we try to make very minimal changes, just like changing a doorway really changes, you know, like fill in a doorway somewhere and cut one out. It really changes the space a lot. So we try to keep it fresh and keep it interesting, so people, like, it's a different experience every time they have a show. So.
And what's the time frame for bringing the exhibition into the space and getting it up and running, so to speak?
For this show, we had 1 week to deinstall our last show.
Okay.
And then we had 2 weeks to do this entire show.
Okay,
So.
and so like for example with Cameron's pieces that are pretty large, did they come in as individual parts and then get hooked together? How did that work?
Yes, they actually did. Cameron's like a very high craft artist, you know, that's like really takes a lot of joy in like building and fabricating everything himself and coming up with all the methods to do things. So Cameron, it's pretty complex, but he made it very easy. Like we went to his studio one day and like took apart his entire diorama, and then went to another location and took apart all the cases and put them in the truck and brought them over here, and then they came together really quickly. Just
very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool to see something that's like get totally dismantled and put in a truck and come back here and get put together really quickly. So
very cool. Thanks so much for being with us, Cole. Cole. Thanks so much for being with us, Cole. The Great Rivers Biennial Exhibition continues here at the Contemporary Art Museum through August 8th. And we hope that you come and see it, because it's been a real pleasure to be with you tonight here on HEC TV Live from the Contemporary Art Museum. Night, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again in May, where we're going to be live from the Shakespeare Festival for our student programs on May 17th and 18th, and live from opening night on May 28th. See you at the Forest Park for the Shakespeare Festival in May. Good night.